Hello and welcome to another part of the Azure Fundamental series. Today I'm going to talk about Azure policies and initiatives, their formats, and their use cases. Think of Azure policy as a set of rules that you want to enforce across your organization. Those rules are known as policy definitions in the world of Azure. They are described in JSON format. Good thing about Azure policies, it allows you to specify remediation steps and can remediate existing resources as well. Any existing resource found to be not in compliance with the newly introduced policy will be marked as non-compliant, unless the policy has a remediation action associated with it. Now let's look at some of the use cases on why you would want to use a Azure policy. Since Azure has global presence and for compliance reason, you would want your users to deploy resources in only maybe Asia Pacific region. So in that case, you can use allowed locations inbuilt policy to restrict that. Similarly, if you want to restrict users to not create certain type of resources, so you can use allowed resources type policy. And then you have some policies to enforce tagging of resources. Now, why you would want to your users to tag your resources? Let's say you want to uh, you want to segregate your resources based on departments. You need to do cost allocation tags, those sort of things. That's why you can enforce your users to tag every resource. And for some compliance reason, maybe you don't want your users to create virtual machine certain types of virtual machines. Then you can use allowed virtual machines SKU policies to restrict them from creating certain types of virtual machines. Azure has lots of inbuilt policy definitions that you can use, but if you can't find any inbuilt one to accomplish something you are trying to do, then you do have an option to build a custom policies as well. We will look at how this works in Azure portal later in this session. You can apply a policy at management group level, subscription level, or even resource group level with an option to make exclusions as well. So for example, if you apply a policy at resource group level, then you can exclude a particular resource in that resource group. Now, if you don't know what is resource group or subscription and how the hierarchy works in Azure, then I strongly suggest you to check out my video on hierarchies in Azure. Let's now look at the elements of the policy in detail. On my screen, I have a sample Azure policy in its JSON format, which limits where resources can be deployed. The policy definition contains multiple elements, which includes display name and description. You use display name and description to identify the policy definition and provide context for when it's used. Next one is mode. Mode is configured depending on if the policy is targeting an Azure Resource Manager property or a resource provider property. Then next on the list is metadata, which is a optional property. This is used to store the information about policy definition. Then comes the next section where you specify the parameters, which are like fields on a form where you specify things like your parameter type, whether it is an array, string, boolean, and so on. And then you can specify what is the default value of the parameter. Last section is the policy rule, which has two subsections consisting of if and then blocks. In the if block, you define one or more conditions that specify when this policy is enforced. And in the then block, you define the effect that happens when the if condition is fulfilled. the effect can be deny, append, modify, and so on. So in our case, which is on your screen, the display name is allowed locations. And then in the description, what we have inputted is basically this policy enables you to restrict the location your organization can specify when deploying resources. So kind of we are creating a self-explanatory property at the start of the policy so that whenever someone is going to look at this policy, they can easily identify what this policy is going to do based on the display name and description. Now, if you look at the parameters, we have created an array called allowed location, which is basically going to take the location as the input in the array, and then based on the input, it is going to determine whether this is allowed or not. If nothing is being inputted, then the default value is West US2. So with these policies, you do have options to specify the default values as well. Now comes the if condition, where we are evaluating what is going to happen when the condition is satisfied. In this case, if you see, we are taking the input we took as part of parameters is being evaluated here. So whatever input you give, if it is part of if it is not part of the, if you see, the condition is not here. So if it is not part of the specified values, then the action that is going to happen is deny. So if you are creating a resource which doesn't belong to the array, basically the parameter array that has been created here, then this policy will not allow that resource to be created. Let's say you want to apply multiple policies on a resource group. And if you apply all of them individually, then it will be a very hectic task and increases administrative effort as well. What you can do in this case is group them together into a service called initiative. Now let's head to Azure portal to look at things in more detail. So here we are in the Azure portal. To go into the policy section, you can just go to the top search bar and type policy. It will show up under the services section. Now, once you are into the policies on the overview tab, you can see the compliance of the current policies. I already have few initiatives and policies created, which I'll be going through in detail in few minutes, but let's first look at how we create a policy. So to create the policy, you need to go into the definitions in the left ribbon under authoring. Once the tab has loaded for you, then we can go ahead and use a existing definition if you are willing to use something which is already built in. But if you don't find anything which suits your purpose from the built-in policies, then you can go ahead and create a policy definition as well. So at the top you have policy definition option, but at this point we are not going to create a new policy definition. Instead, look at the built-in policies. So in the built-in policies, you have a search tab here. If you know what is your policy that you want to use, you can directly search it here. Otherwise, you can use the category option to drill down in the categories and see which is best suited for you. So for now, let's drill down to compute category and probably look at allowed virtual machine size SKUs. This is the one which I was referring to in the previous slides. So this is the policy definition. If you can see, the JSON format is visible at the bottom since you are using an inbuilt one. So it is already pre-created. You just need to click on assign. Once you click on assign, you get an option to define the scope. So remember, I was saying that you can apply a policy at a subscription level or at the management level as well. And then to a resource group as well. So here, let's select our subscription, and now you have an option to select a resource group as well. And just make a note that it says optionally choose a resource group. So if you want to create a policy that is applied at your whole subscription, you don't really need to choose this option, and it's not a mandatory. But let's choose a resource group. For instance, let's choose Cloud Shell 1407 in my case, and click select. Now, once you have chosen the scope, you can see there is an option of exclusions as well. So let's say I want to exclude one resource in my Cloud Shell 1407 resource group. So if you see here, you have an option to make exclusion. So for example, let me exclude YouTube demo 1984 from this policy. You click save, it will give you an option, and you click yes. So your policy is enabled now. In the policy enforcement, you need to make sure the policy is selected as enabled. You can change the assigned by name as well. And then the important thing here is you need to look at the advanced options. If you want to change anything, then you need to select the parameters. Now, this is what will be the array that I was talking about when I was explaining through the JSON format. Whatever you select in allowed size SKU becomes the part of your array. So let's say I want to maybe allow my users to create a standard underscore AS SKU, and then probably S6, and maybe something, if we go up, probably D232 ADS underscore version 5, which I will never use, but let's, for instance, use this. Now, in the remediation, you can create a remediation policy for, let's say you have any existing resource that doesn't fall into the criteria that you have selected. What you want to do against it, either if you don't specify anything here, then it will be reported as non-compliant. But if you create a remediation action, it will go ahead and do that for you. And then in the non-compliance message, you can specify a custom message for the users, which they'll see when they create something which doesn't fall into this criteria. For now, I'll just leave it as blank, but you can put any message that you would like your users to see. Then you go to review and create, and hit click and hit create. It will create the policy for you in background. So once the policy is created, it takes some time, around 30 minutes, for it to take effect. So as soon as you create a policy, if you try to create a resource which you know should not be allowed to be created, it will still allow you to create, because it takes some time to do an initial evaluation before it comes into effect. So for instance, if I see here, so it says 100%, but if you see, it says zero compliant and zero non-compliant. So it has still not evaluated. If you see in the compliance status, it says not started. So you need to give it some time before the policy kicks in. Now, if you want to trigger a manual evaluation, you can use a PowerShell command. The PowerShell command can be used to force a manual evaluation if you want to do in any case. That's how you create a policy. Now let's look at how it looks like when the compliance runs and it finds something which is not compliant. So for instance, I created a policy which requires a tag and its value on resource, and it is applied on a resource group. So if you see, it is saying the overall resource compliance is 50%. That is, one resource is compliant and one resource is non-compliant. Then if you scroll to the bottom, you also get an option to see which resource is non-compliant. And in my case, Cloud Shell Storage 1407 is not compliant. And then if you click in the details section under the compliance region, it will tell you why exactly it is not compliant. So This is the custom message that I created when I was creating this policy, saying missing department tag or its allowed value. So this is how you specify a custom message that gets displayed to user. Um, and the tag that I created was basically the name of the tag was department and its value was IT. So this is what is missing. That's why the resource is being flagged as non-compliant. Now, this resource was created before I created this policy. That's why it is showing as not non-compliant, and it doesn't have any remediation action attached to it. So it has not been remediated. But if I try to create a resource now, which we will do shortly, it will not allow me to create a resource unless I assign it a tag. Yep. Let's just have a look which resource group this uh, is in, and then we can quickly go back. Okay, so before we go and try to create a resource, let's first look at a initiative. Initiative is basically a group of policies, as I mentioned earlier. You will most likely be in a situation where you will want to apply a group of policies rather than doing things manually. In that case, you create a initiative. Now, initiative, as I said, is a group of policies. So if we look at this initiative, I have two policies in this initiative. One is allowed location and the another one is require a tag. So if I apply this on any resource group, then the resource that is getting created needs to fulfill both of these criteria, not just one. That's how the initiatives work. Let's go and quickly look at our resource groups to see which policy is applied on which resource group. So in this case, let's go to Cloud Shell 1407. Now this is the second option to check whether whether the resource group that you are looking has any policy applied to it. So what you do is go into resource groups, go into that particular resource group, and then click on policies in the left-hand section under settings. This will show you which all policies are applied on this resource group. Now, if you see here, the top one is a default initiative which is applied, and then apart from it, there are two policies that I have created. One is allowed virtual machine SKUs, and the second one is requires a tag and its value on resources, which I was talking a few minutes back. So let's try to create a resource without a tag and see how it shows up. So the simplest and the quickest one is a storage account. Let's create a storage account. So I'll choose my resource group, which has the tag policy assigned to it. Mm, so let's just, hopefully it's not taken. Yeah, it's not taken. And then so at the moment, you see, I have not given it any tag. So as soon as I went to the tag option, I can see a red cross, and at the bottom it says policy validation error, see details below. Policy enforcement says value does not meet requirements on resource this. The field tag name department with the value IT is required. So it's clearly telling you that this is the policy that has been enforced on it, and this is what is being expected here, which you have not inputted. Now, even if I ignore this and try to review, it will again fail in the final validation as well. So if I go back and create a tag called department and specify its value as IT, this should go away. As you see, as expected, this goes away. When I do a review, which it's doing right now, so you can see there are no errors in the review, and I can go ahead and create my resource. So this is how you enforce compliance in your organization. You are creating a boundary around your users that this is what you want them to do, and this is what you don't want them to do. If they are trying to do something which is not allowed by compliance, the policies and initiatives will stop them from doing this. So, folks, this is what I wanted to cover in this demonstration. If you have any doubts, then post them in the comments section. I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. And if you like the content, then hit like and subscribe my channel to stay up to date with the future releases of the Azure Fundamental series. Thank you.